We're going to begin. And so you'll have to, they say never start a speech or a talk with an apology, but you're going to have to forgive me. Because when I'm in the dojo and I'm in like Sifu mode, I don't really get sad or experience very much beyond just like boundless energy and excitement and positivity. It's the only way I can survive looking at your technique. But, and I'm not saying but, it is likely that, I'm going to have some kind of emotion in this, but I promise you it's not as much as I would feel if I were just having this conversation by myself outside of the dojo. So it's not really a disclaimer. I'm just telling you how it is. This is the talk that I kind of was thinking about right after my mom died. And I thought, I'm going to talk about my experience. I'm going to talk about grief and loss and how to deal with it and all of that. And as I started to think about that talk, I realized that I don't know anything because it had just happened, first of all. And, I was in the process of figuring out how it was all working, but also I have lost loved ones. I talked about my grandma's passing a little while ago, and I will say that this has been quite different. And since my mom was such an immediate force in my life, and we had so much contact and so much more of my life with my mom than I have had with my grandparents who have passed. This hit in a very different way. And I want to talk about that kind of the way that I look at it, the way that I've experienced it, and my kind of suggestion for how that might work for the rest of you when you experience the same thing, and how it works with our life, with our practice rather. So when somebody asked me earlier today, well, the topic is loss. What are we going to talk about? Just loss in general, or like something more specific? And I said, I'm not going to give a talk about what happens when you lose your keys. This is about something that is very a profound loss. How do you deal with these losses in our lives that they feel essentially like you've got a limb chopped off? It's like a piece of you is gone. And I'm going to take a little bit from what I wrote in the blog that you guys will get in the newsletter. But I've been writing and talking about how to deal with challenges and hardships in life for a long time. And the truth is, I just have not really had a lot of hardships or challenges in my life. And that's not to say, look at me, I'm so amazing that nothing seems hard. It's because I've just been really blessed and lucky and have had just a charmed life where just not that much stuff seems to go badly. And a big part of that is obviously my perception of it. I'm sure that a lot of people in my situation, especially now, would think like, what are you talking about? Your life is terrible. I choose not to see it that way. But one of the reasons that I love martial arts from the very beginning was because it was like the first real challenge in my life. And it was the first thing that I chose to really take on, rather than to just say like, yeah, I just don't care about this very much. I cared about martial arts. When you care about something, and you pour yourself into it, then it has that kind of effect on you. And obviously our relationships, if we have relationships that we just don't care that much about, the loss of those is not really a thing. But if it is somebody that has really been instrumental in our lives, it's a very real challenge, a very real hardship to lose that person in a totally different experience. One of the key things here, the differences that I see, if we take the challenges in martial arts versus the challenges of losing a loved one, or the challenges that kind of show up in our lives and present themselves to us, they don't present themselves nicely. They crush us like a boulder falling off of a cliff. And I didn't ask for this. This is really the difference here. Is martial arts, it's a real challenge. Meditation is a real challenge. It's the hardest thing that many of us will ever do, as far as an undertaking that we are really trying to, challenge ourselves with. But the key difference here is we get to choose that. And we have that always somewhere in the back of our mind. We know that, you know what, if I choose, I can just walk away from this. I don't have to actually be here. And the fact that we are struggling in practice, and yet we continue to choose to take that challenge on, is really nice. And not all challenges are like that. I did not choose for my mom to die. I did not choose for my mom to get cancer and to be sick for years. And the experience of that was not fun. The experience of the challenge of martial arts is fun. Even when you're getting beat up, it's still fun. There's nothing fun about losing somebody who you really love. And it is what I'm going to propose for a second here is going to seem kind of insane and impossible, but I want you to just accept that it might be possible for us to choose the experiences that we have that are visited on us in the same way that we choose the things in our life that truly are our choice, that we can walk away from, like the challenges that we decide to enroll ourselves in. We can choose to see the other challenges in the same way and decide, like, I'm choosing. I'm not causing my mom to die. I'm not causing my mom to have cancer, but I'm choosing this challenge. And with that kind of seemingly subtle, but it's a really big shift, a paradigm shift. It all of a sudden takes on kind of the same spirit as our practice, where it's like, I'm deciding to dive into this and to become powerful and brave in the response of it, in the face of it. So if we can learn to choose our challenges and learn to choose our hardships, then our experience and our response can transform like that in an instant. So try it. And if it's not something that you've practiced doing, then in the face of it, an immediate loss that you're not really prepared for, it's going to be almost impossible. So start with something smaller and more manageable. I was sent this poem that I think puts into words in a much better way than I can put into words the feeling of a profound loss like this. So this is by John O'Donohue, and it's called For Grief. He says, when you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you gets fragile. Your thoughts make your eyes unsure. And some dead echo drags your voice down where words have no confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss, and though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you when the silence of absence deepens. Flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid or undone. There are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life, until the moment breaks and you're thrown back onto the black tide of loss. Days when you have your heart back, you're able to function well until the middle of work or encounter. Suddenly, with no warning, you're ambushed by grief. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears is reduced to its last drop. Gradually, you will learn acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all this time. So that would almost feel overly dramatic, but it's a pretty good representation of what this feels like. The part of this that really kind of resonated with me was the idea of sometimes I still feel great. In fact, as you guys have probably heard me say even recently, usually I feel great. Most of the time, I feel embarrassingly happy, just all the time in life, and that has caused me while I'm dealing with my mom's death to kind of doubt myself. Am I doing this right? And I have times where I'm way down, and I have times where I'm way up. And sometimes I'm way up because I'm remembering my mom in a very happy memory. And sometimes I'm way up because I'm, just not thinking about that at all. It's just life is happening. So I've been experiencing this in the same way that he talks about, feeling great and feeling terrible. And if I sit, when I was writing this blog this morning, I had one of those more profound experiences of loss. I wrote this: I miss my mom greatly. And there have been many times where I picked up the phone to call her before realizing that there's no more time to catch up, to talk about our day or what's going on in the world. And I'll never again see her smiling face at the door or sing and dance with her. And my kids will never get to meet her. And we've had our last hug. And you can see that's sad. And I want to allow myself to experience that. And it's important to process this grief and not to pretend that it's not happening. And then there are times where, in 5 seconds from now when my tears are dry, I feel totally fine again. But this related to a question that two students had asked me about in the last couple of classes, about this idea of trying to keep an even kind of mindset or an even emotional state, and how it's weird. People in society don't try to do this. We try to do this, and what happens is we do this. We have ups and downs. We're riding this roller coaster of emotion, and we don't want to experience lasting or unnecessary grief or pain. And part of my process with this is recognizing that and being able to fully experience and then let it go and then move on to the next moment. Because there's a very big difference between experiencing grief and other emotions like this and dwelling on them or being attached to them and allowing yourself to be down in that kind of spiraling, sinking feeling that lasts for days or weeks or months. And that doesn't help. That's not a healthy way of dealing with it. And if it happens, and we have to be great with it. So, as I was saying before, everyone wants to be chasing these highs. And of course, everyone wants to be happy. And that, we're told by society, we're told by Hollywood and advertisements and all this that, like, you've got to be happy, get happier. And so we're like chasing this, but you can't be up here without this inevitably happening. Even if this is just taking you down to like a baseline, you're still experiencing these waves and troughs, these crests and falls. And you know, what happens is then we find ourselves down here, and here we're like, we got to scramble to get out of here. Don't let yourself be down here. Of course not. And so we get attached to those highs, and we resist the lows, and all that does is cause this to get even worse. So what we want to do is stop resisting and stop being attached and just let that go and let ourselves feel and experience exactly what we are experiencing without holding on, tensing, resisting. And then this will naturally start to become this. And it doesn't, this even kind of way of being does not mean that we have to be robots. It doesn't mean that we have to, you know, pretend that emotions aren't happening, that things aren't happening to us. They are. What it means is that, you know, most of the time we're like this rather than most of the time being like this. And then we will encounter this and we'll kind of even off. And we'll encounter this and then we'll even off because we're not attached to it, because we're not causing it to go higher and deeper. We're just allowing it to be. And so this is like, you know, the way that we practice with meditation and the way that we practice physically with our martial arts practice is to just flow with and let it be and be great exactly where you are. You know, you're learning Tai Chi, and a lot of people are always looking for, like, I got to learn the next posture, or you're learning the, you know, I got to learn the next spinning technique, the next flashy, fancy thing. And that leaves you with the experience of always being kind of like jerked in one direction or the other, and never really settling and being totally content and centered with where you are. So we got to learn to love the posture that we're doing right now in Tai Chi, to love the technique that we're doing right now, to love exactly how great and terrible we are at whatever it is that we're doing, because then it will flow and feel effortless. And in that state, things are effortless, and we're going to be the most powerful and free that we possibly can be. The ups and downs in life are not only about like one thing that happens to us. You know, things happen in succession. And for me, I've got this real bizarre situation where I'm getting married in a couple of weeks, right after losing my mom, which I'm very happy that I'm getting married. There's very little that is upsetting about that to me. I'm super happy about it. And I'm not happy that my mom can't be there. The reason that we actually planned the wedding for this time is because we thought that my mom was still going to be able to be there. And I promise you, there are going to be times, you know, during the time of my wedding that I'm going to be sad about that and wish that my mom was there. But most of the time, I'm going to be really happy and excited about the whole thing, because it's a very small wedding. If you guys are watching this and wondering why you haven't been invited, it's because it's only immediate family, because it's the COVID times. In case you haven't heard, there's a pandemic going on in the world. So it's very logistically not a problem. So it's going to be mostly just great. And it's like, you know, going from here and then going back up to here, and that emotional whiplash is real. Now, the wedding is something that I have chosen in my life. That is not one that just happened to me, as much as it may have surprised me that I was able to find someone. It was a choice. But whether we're choosing the good or choosing the bad, the power and freedom that gives us is real. So that's just an example of, you know, how this happens to us in life. How we deal with it is up to us. I had a little bit more that I had written here. So there's, you guys know, I talk about Paramahansa Yogananda sometimes. We have this picture up in the dojo. One of the things that he said is that when we're born, we're crying and everyone else is happy. And when we die, we're at peace and everyone else is crying. It's a very curious kind of bookend to our life. And it's kind of funny. I mean, the part where everyone is crying is not funny, but it's kind of funny because all of that is, you know, the perspective. And it relates to this samurai maxim that I like to quote from time to time, which is, we are born with nothing and we die with nothing. So everything that we get in the middle of birth and death is what we make of it, and it is all bonus. If we live our lives and we interact with each other with this in mind, it is all impermanent. We know that this will all end someday. We will end, our loved ones will end, the whole planet is going to be engulfed by the sun, and the whole universe probably someday will cease to exist. So don't get attached to any of it. And that doesn't mean that we should not experience it. We're put here to experience it and experience it fully, and to love and to lose and to cry and to laugh, and it's all brilliant. But when we get attached, it is from a place of ego. The ego lives in a fantasy world. The ego lives in a place where it thinks it can hold on to things, and it thinks that there's a very real separation between you and me, and all of this is an illusion. It's a fantasy. If you live from that fantasy, then of course you're constantly being jerked around, and life feels very much like a roller coaster. But when we recognize that all of this is impermanent, and the fantasy of being able to hold on to any of it is just that, it's nothing, then we're able to enjoy, and we're able to fully experience the lows, and to just let it go when the time is right. And when the time is right is not up to our ego. You know, the part of me that keeps wondering, like, am I grieving correctly? Am I crying enough? That's all ego. And to be able to let that go is our practice. That's what meditation gives us, is the opportunity to just be with the way that we are, exactly the way that we are, and to love it. There was another poem that was sent to me. This one is called Farewell Letter. This one's also rough, sorry. She wrote me a letter after her death. This is by David White, and it's meant to be a letter from his mom. She wrote me a letter after her death, and I remember a kind of happy light falling on the envelope as I sat by the rose tree on her old bench at the back door, so surprised by its arrival, wondering what she would say, looking up before I could open it and laughing to myself in silent expectation. Dear son, it is time for me to leave you. I'm afraid that the words you are using to hear I'm afraid the words you are used to hearing are no longer mine to give. They're gone and mingled back in the world where it is no longer in my power to be their first original author, nor their last loving bearer. You can hear motherly words of affection now only from your own mouth, and only when you speak them to those who stand motherless before you. As for me, I must forsake adulthood and be bound gladly to a new childhood. You must understand this apprenticeship demands of me an elemental innocence from everything I ever held in my hands. I know your generous soul is well able to let me go. You will in the end be happy to know my God was true, and I find myself, after loving you all so long in the wide, infinite mercy of being mothered myself. P.S. All your intuitions were true. And he goes on to write, a mother remains a mother even after they have passed away. And in many ways, the conversation between mother and son, mother and daughter, if we allow it, can deepen, intensify, and lead to new forms of love long after they're going. So this one got me. Somebody sent me, I got a few really nice cards and letters, and one of them was from the mother of one of my best friends from high school, and I have not seen this woman in a long time. She sent me this really sweet card that said, essentially, and I'm going to paraphrase, I wish I brought it with me, but it said like, you'll find yourself missing your mom and missing her words, and then one day you'll open your mouth to speak, and your mom's words will come out, and she'll be there with you. And I read that and I started just bawling. It's a beautiful sentiment, and it's true. And the true is my mom was speaking through me for many, many years, my whole life. When I fix people's grammar, or when I, laugh with them, or whatever it is, turn random phrases into songs, and all of that has been my mom coming through and showing up. And I really like this idea of realizing that none of us ever truly lose somebody. And now this is going to seem like it's a contradiction to what I was just saying, but I'm not suggesting that we need to be attached to these people, because my mom is gone. And for me to wish that she was still here would be unhelpful. But to pretend that she's not still here with me and, coming through me in everything that I do would also be false. And I love that. Whether I do it consciously or not, I always have her with me, and she's still here impacting the world. And I think that's brilliant. So this is a nice sentiment to end this talk on. And I think that this is going to be the experience that most of us have with loss, is the ups and downs. But if we choose to have the taste that's left in our mouth to be sweet, if we choose to remember them in that sweetness, and to carry them with us wherever we go, not being attached to, but just like allowing them to flow through us, then I think this is a very powerful way of dealing with loss and dealing with grief. To allow it to happen, to allow it to flow, to not be attached to the highs, to not repress or fight against the lows, but to just be there with it. And to carry on, not just with like a stiff upper lip, but because this is how life works. We grow, we love, we lose, and we continue, and we will go someday, and the people who we leave behind will grieve for us and love us and take us on with them. So it's gotta happen. We may as well enjoy it as much as we can. So as you sit for meditation tonight, I don't want you to sit there and think about how sad all of this stuff is, because that's not what we're practicing with meditation. We're practicing allowing it to flow, and if it's something that you are meant to really fully experience, let it happen, but don't be attached to that thought or that experience in the moment. If it's there, it's there. Let it be there. Don't resist it, and don't be attached to it. It is what arises in this moment, and then it will flow right through us, just like it should in everyday life, even when we're dealing with profound loss. Sit comfortably.